Is it useful to know what a noun phrase is? Well, the answer is yes, because when you're using English, when you're reading English, when you're writing English, if you don't know what all the pieces are and how they fit together, it's going to be very hard to use English naturally. It's going to be very hard sometimes to understand what you're reading or what people are saying. So yes, it is very useful. We're going to talk about in this video how you can identify a noun phrase when you see it. We're going to be looking at real examples. And once you understand the pieces and how it works, it's not as complicated as you may think. If you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And now let's get into the video. What is a noun phrase? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. How can you identify it? Why should we learn what a noun phrase is? All in good time. Actually, no, I can tell you right now. A noun phrase is a phrase that acts as a noun. What is a phrase? More than one word together. That's what a phrase is. And you can have adjective phrases, you can have prepositional phrases, and you can have noun phrases. Now, it doesn't mean necessarily that there is a noun right at the start. It could mean that, but often there are other things around it and in front of it that will tell you at least here is a noun phrase or here comes a noun phrase, right? I'm going to teach you, I'm going to show you what you might see that will help you identify a noun phrase. And then I'm going to give you some examples and we're going to sort of dive into it and explore. But in general, if you want to find a noun phrase, look for the nouns in the sentence. Okay, that's a noun. At least there's one of those. And see if there are other pieces connected to it that are about it. And the greatest test is to see if you could remove the whole thing and replace it with it or that or them or something like that, some sort of pronoun. You can replace it with that to know that it is a contained phrase, right? You also want to look for determiners. A determiner is a word like the or it or that. It tells you, for example, what we're pointing at, what we're looking at. Determiners sort of specifically identify something in a sentence. You also want to look out for adjectives. Why? Because adjectives often go before the noun. So if you see a blue, then blue is before a noun, then the thing after it could be a noun phrase. So these are just things to look out for. You might also see modifiers. Now, an adjective is a modifier, is a type of modifier, but you can have other modifiers as well that are somehow about the noun, the main noun, the noun that we're talking about that might be a noun phrase that could give you a little bit more information. But again, the best test, I think, is to just see if you can replace the whole thing with some kind of pronoun. And if you can do that, it's likely to be a noun phrase. If you're going to replace a noun with one pronoun, like it, for example, there's a good chance, right? And why should we do this? Well, we should know this because often sentences look very complicated, but when you really break them down, they're not that complicated. And I think noun phrases are a great example because they can be quite long. We're going to look at some longer ones, some shorter ones. They can be very long and make a sentence look very complicated, but then you realize, oh, that whole thing can just be replaced with it. And so that's easy. So it can help you to deeply understand how grammar works and not get overwhelmed, and that's going to obviously make you more powerful when it comes to using grammar naturally, right? Okay, so let's get into it. We look for a noun. The main word in a noun phrase is always a noun. It doesn't mean that it always comes first, but it is there, right? The noun is the key thing there. Places things ideas, it's always there. Look for determiners. Determiners might include articles like, as I mentioned, the, but can also include things like my, his, her, this, that, those, for example. These are specific determiners which come before a noun and provide information about it, right? So if you say these dandelions, well, it's telling you which ones, not those dandelions, but these dandelions, right? So that's what the determiner does. It determines things, right? Then the adjectives, as I said, they go before the noun, so that will help you identify it. And then for the modifiers, we might see adverbs around it or in it, and sometimes they go after. So you just have to be aware of the different types of modifiers that you could see and how those can help you identify noun phrases. So why don't we just get into some examples, right? We're going to start with I couldn't resist ordering a delicious chocolate cake. Okay. Now, what do we have here? Well, where's the noun in this? Cake. There it is. That's pretty easy. Chocolate is a noun too, right? Yes, it can be, but also chocolate is modifying cake. So this is where we look for modifiers that may be nouns, but sometimes not. Because chocolate is before cake there, we know that cake is the main noun, and chocolate is being used as an adjective, as a modifier, modifying cake. And so is delicious. Now, delicious cannot be a noun by itself. Deliciousness can be a noun, but that's kind of weird, right? Unless it's an apple. There's an apple called a golden delicious, in which case that is the name of the apple, and that's a noun. But delicious is always an adjective, pretty much. And chocolate could be a noun, but can be used as an adjective, and is called a modifier in this case. And then we have the determiner, a. So this whole thing, a delicious chocolate cake. Now we need to test it to see if we can replace it with a specific pronoun. So I couldn't resist ordering. Now can we replace this with the word it or that? Let's see if it sounds natural. I couldn't resist ordering this, that, it. Absolutely. I couldn't resist ordering it. So what I like to do to test it is I like to say it twice, the first time as it is, and then the second time I will say it with the pronoun that I want to use to replace it. I couldn't resist ordering a delicious chocolate cake. I couldn't resist ordering it. So I want to repeat it to emphasize it. I think that can give us a pretty good clue and a pretty good idea that yes, this indeed is a noun phrase. This whole thing is a noun phrase. Now let's look at the next one here. I asked her who bought that beautiful painting on the wall. Now, one thing I didn't mention is prepositional phrases. So a prepositional phrase is a phrase that starts with a preposition that has a preposition right at the beginning and tells you about the position of something. But that doesn't mean that a prepositional phrase like over the hill, that's a prepositional phrase, or after brunch, or within 30 minutes of the party ending, right? Those sorts of prepositional phrases, they can also be inside of a noun phrase. So I asked her who bought that beautiful painting on the wall. The question you have to ask yourself is, are all of these things about the noun? Well, what's the noun? Painting. In this case, the painting, that painting is what we want to talk about. It is the noun of this phrase. That is a determiner telling me it's that one and not that one, right? Beautiful, okay, basic adjective, okay, modifying painting, okay. On the wall, prepositional phrase. But now we have to ask ourselves, is that prepositional phrase telling us something about the painting? Yes, it is. And so we can say that that whole thing, painting is the noun, that is the determiner, adjective beautiful, and modifier on the wall, which is a prepositional phrase. So it's a prepositional phrase and it is a modifier. Why is it a modifier? Because it's telling you something about something else. That's what a modifier is, by the way. A modifier is a word or phrase that simply tells you something else about another word or phrase in a sentence. That's what a modifier is. An adjective is a modifier. An adverb is a modifier. Well, a prepositional phrase in this case is a modifier, modifying what? Painting. What is it modifying? Well, we know it's beautiful, so adjective is modifying beautiful as an adjective is modifying painting, but on the wall is modifying our understanding of painting in regards to its position. We know where it is. It's on the wall. So that prepositional phrase is part of the noun phrase. Now we must test it though. We need to see if it all makes sense. So what we have to do is replace it with a preposition. Can we do it? And by the way, there are exceptions to this. This is just a general test. I'm not giving you a hard rule. There's some phrasing that sounds odd when you replace it with the preposition. I just think it's a pretty good test that can tell you, okay, it's probably a noun phrase. Okay. So how would we say this? I asked her who bought that beautiful painting on the wall. I asked her who bought it. Perfect. It works. Well, beautiful. Then that is definitely a noun phrase. Next one. Next week, I'm helping take care of my sister's cat. Okay. Now I say of there, of my sister's cat. The of, that's a preposition, right? Well, in this case, it's not part of the noun phrase because it is, number one, not giving details about this, right? It's a part of the bigger sentence. Okay, so what's going on here? Did I read it correctly? Next week, I'm helping take care of my sister's 2 cats. Okay, did I say it wrong the first time? I feel like I said cat instead of 2 cats. 2 cats. Okay. My sister's 2 cats. If this is a noun phrase, what are the pieces? Cats. All right, we've got our basic noun. Got it. Determiner. My. Again, not hers, not his. My. My what? My sister. So in this case, sister is, or sisters rather, is a modifier modifying what? Well, it's modifying 2 cats because it's telling me more about them. So it's a modifier as a possessive noun phrase. So it's kind of a noun phrase by itself, right? It's telling me something more. Possessive because it's sisters, not sister. And then 2 is used as an adjective in front of cats here. So my sister's 2 cats as a whole thing. And often you see these determiners right at the beginning of the noun phrase, and that's a good often indication, okay, this might be a noun phrase, especially if it's possessive, my sister's 2 cats, to tell you it's one big piece. Can we say, next week I'm helping take care of them? Well, let's try it. Next week I'm helping take care of my sister's 2 cats. Next week I'm helping take care of them. Absolutely. Them. We have to use them instead of it because we're talking about 2 cats. So it has to be plural. And if it's plural, then it would be in this case, them. All right. We have one more example to talk about here. This one is, deep in the forest we discovered an old house with a blue door. An old house with a blue door. Okay. So deep in the forest we discovered what? What is the thing that we discovered? Well, it's a thing. What is the thing? It's a house. Okay, so houses are noun. Well, how many houses? 1. How do we know? N. So N is our determiner. But you might say, well, N is an article. Yes, articles are determiners too. My is a determiner. This is a determiner. N is a determiner. Just because something is one thing doesn't mean it's also not another thing, right? Adjective is a modifier. It's a specific type of modifier, right? Speaking of adjectives, old. Okay, so that tells me something about it tells me something about the house. But we have another adjective here, blue, with a blue door. Okay, well, we have a kind of prepositional phrase here, with a blue door. But is that whole piece telling me something else? Just like with the other one, we have now a phrase that's telling us about the other thing in this noun phrase, which is house. What kind of house? An old house. So we have one adjective in front of house, old, which is giving us a detail, and then with a blue door, we're now, imagine if you use with, you're kind of adding pieces to it, with a blue door, with an old roof, with a thatched roof, with a chimney, with a fairy ring around it, right? With a is sort of like clicking on Lego pieces. So it's absolutely a modifier for house because it is telling you more about the house. So an old house with a blue door is a noun phrase, and we can test it as we have so far. Deep in the forest, we discovered an old house with a blue door. Deep in the forest, we discovered it. So we could just replace an old house with a blue door with it, and we've got it. Okay? We've got it. There you go. So this is not super easy. Why should you learn this? If you can understand this, you can start to break sentences down and understand the pieces without getting lost in there being a lot of words, right? And also understand that, big sentences, long sentences, complicated sentences, they're rarely complicated because it's impossible to understand. They're often complicated because they have a lot of pieces working together. And if you can begin to understand these pieces that work together, you can then become a great writer. You can then understand sentences that you didn't understand before, right? You become a kind of wielder of the language, and that's something you want. So grammar is not boring in this way. If you're learning these pieces and understanding this stuff, now you can start using it, and that makes you, I think, powerful. If you have any questions about this, let me know in the comments. If you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe or follow. And also, feel free to get a free English course to improve your English conversation skills. That is called Natural English Conversations. That is in the links in the description.